Hey, this is Misery Loves Company, a weekly social reading series hosted by miserytourism.com. Every Friday, we welcome outsider and blooper reel shit. Every fucking Friday, we welcome outsider and transgressive authors to come and share their work. This Friday is no different. We are going to get rolling here. So, first up tonight is Keko, and I will put the link in the chat.
Okay. Hello. So 4 poems. 2 of them are very short. The first one, Das photo spoke to selfies. A body is not a mountain, not a tree, not an anthem. A mountain doesn't need to carry its weight. Scouts won't gasp and gaze at deviations. Time won't celebrate it. That's the first one. Sorry, I feel a bit nervous since I'm the first one this time, but it'll be okay till the end. The second one is Short Circuit, Erlkönig. That album reminds me of my last young summer and my first old one. I was a pool boy. There was a lot of physical work not in the job description, and I lived on the mountain above the resort, so I was offered many an adventure. I smoked weed, listened to music, a part of which was Erlkönig, and strolled as adventures that brushed beside me pulsated elsewhere. Still young and attractive enough not to give an idea of a creep, but too old to be in the body. I observed freely. The body, the particles between the body and me, a body obsolete in its peak, a gavy, sun, sea, pebbles, tamarisk, and rock. Smoking the sweat, drinking my throat, ugly pool surrounded by sparkling postures. My 2 eyes caught every gesture, effective curves and muscles, crickets and the stars. The nights on the mountain a reconciliation, the green air and clear murmurs, obsolete observator, burning up the idea. And the next one is Occurrence. I came out of the room to look at the moon spread over the sea and saw. This other light led me to. Every faraway color is a beautiful natural phenomenon. Orange, crimson, fuchsia are all cold, and no burning bodies, no screaming bodies in orange, crimson, fuchsia. Smell like the moon, like the stars playing with the clouds, blasé concubines under baldachins. That old woman trapped in her room is orange, crimson, fuchsia, are all cold. Every faraway moon, stars, beautiful, men under orange baldachins. Crimson city and the smell of fuchsia, the calm of the night in my nose. And the last one is An Old Man in an Old Town. Streets I once knew are shooting bicycles at me. Streets I once knew are planting dog shit everywhere. And I'm Peach in Mario Kart being Bowsered, an infirm reference that panically recalls and grease the satellites. Here I am, my people, how are you? And the end.
These are beautiful. And that second poem, the second poem, Short Circuit, is so fucking good. Because it captures something that you like that's always kind of under the surface in coming of age pieces, right? The recognition that the moment that peak experience, that peak moment in life is the beginning of decline, and you really capture the tension between feeling like you've arrived at the peak of your life and knowing that decline is coming. And I love, there's a line I put in the chat, a body obsolete in its peak. Like in that one sentence, you capture all of that so beautifully. And the rest of that piece like unfolds on either side of that in a really wonderful way, I think. And I also love the Mario Kart reference in the last one, just like, especially because the two lines before that are so like frantic, and the sense of like the city literally throwing shit at you, right? And the sense of like suddenly like agency isn't yours anymore. Agency isn't in the human body. Agency is in the city that's like assaulting you. And so the Mario Kart reference, I don't know, I'm thinking of rubber band AI and the way the games are structured so that like you feel like you have control, but you don't a lot of the time. And I feel like you capture that really well in that sentence. Anyway,
one of the things that I that jumped out at me was the connection. This is Blick. It was a connection between the first poem, "The Burning of Ideas," and then the second poem, "The Burning of Bodies." So it just resonated. It just when you start talking about the burning of the bodies, it reminded me of the first poem. It was almost like a talk about sports. It was almost like a relay, where they passed the baton over to the second one. Really liked it.
Yeah, thanks. I really like Occurrence too because of the like almost synesthesia. I don't know if I said that right, but the orange crimson fuchsia and the crimson city and the smell of fuchsia, the calm of the night in my nose, almost like a synesthesia type of thing. I love that.
Yeah, I put down it's so sensual, that poem. You can smell it and you can see it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks. I agree completely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Four fucking kick-ass poems. Oh, I'm sorry. I kind of stepped on you there. What were you saying?
Nothing important. Regarding the dog shit, I imagine it like the bananas in Mario Kart.
Oh yeah, yep. blue shells and bananas, rip.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much, Keko. And John is up next. I'll put the link in the chat.
Hello.
Hey, John. How's it going?
Good. All right. This one's called Extra Cool Style. It was Stephen Miller's first day at Central High School. He felt nervous. He hadn't had many friends at his old school, Flyover State High, but it was still hard starting over at zero. His mom packed him a lunch. He tore through it on the bus ride there. She left a note. Sophomore year will be great. Don't be afraid to be yourself. Love you, Mom. She dated it September 1st, 1998, as a subtle way of establishing the setting. She drew every letter like a heart so he couldn't read it. Stephen went to his locker and found his schedule in it. He shut it. When he turned around, he was shoved against it. A senior towered over him. Stephen was surrounded by a group of jocks. Hey, nerd, you must be the new kid. I'm Paul Bradley, captain of the football team. He offered his hand. Stephen shook it. Paul pulled him in and noogied him. You see that hot piece of ass standing next to me? That's my girlfriend, Veronica Stacy Bell. She's the hottest girl in school and captain of the cheerleading squad. Veronica waved at Stephen seductively. Paul picked Stephen up by the collar. You're new here, so I want to make things clear. I better, under no circumstances, catch you having sex with my girlfriend. Got it? Stephen nodded. Good. He released him. Let's see your schedule. He took it from Stephen. World history? That's for babies. He crumpled and tossed it, then turned to his goons. Come on, guys. Let's go play football. They left, but Veronica lingered behind for a moment to wink, blow a kiss, and flash her pussy at Stephen. Some kid picked up Stephen's crumpled schedule and handed it to him. Hey, don't let those guys give you trouble. They're just big, cool jocks. I'm Josh. It sounds like we have world history together. Thanks, I'm Stephen. It's my first day. It's not all bad. Tell you what, after school, let's go to Big Burger. It's kind of the local hang, and I'll introduce you to the dudes. After school, Josh drove Stephen over to Big Burger. They joined a booth with Josh's friends, and everybody was introduced to each other. Stephen was feeling good, chatting it up, and then he saw Paul and Veronica walk in. Stephen stared at Veronica. A shiver ran down his penis. Hi, she said sexily to the cashier. Could I get a big burger, extra cool style? Stephen was in love. Paul saw him staring, marched over, flipped the table, and picked Stephen up by the head. Hey, don't think I don't see you looking at my hot babe girlfriend, dork. I said it once and I'll say it again. Don't you ever let me catch you having sex with her. Ever. Because if I catch you having sex with my girlfriend, well, let's just say I better not catch you having sex with my girlfriend. Got it? And I especially better not catch you two having sex in my bedroom while I'm at football practice. Got it, wimp? Stephen nodded desperately. Good. Bet you couldn't even get it up, loser. And he jerked Stephen off a little. Then he turned to Veronica. Hey, babe, I'm going to football practice. Now, love you. He ran out, hopped in his Mustang, and tore ass out of there. Veronica walked up to Stephen with her big burger, extra cool style, and sat next to him. She ran her hands through his hair and pushed her boobs against his face. She smelled good. Stephen turned to his new friends. Damn it, I'm tired of being bullied by Paul. He turned to Veronica. Veronica, would you like to have sex with me in Paul's bedroom while he's at football practice? More than anything. Veronica knocked. Paul's mom answered the door. Oh, hello, Veronica. Hello, Miss Bradley. This is my friend Stephen. We have to study for a big project in your son's, my boyfriend's room, alone together. Okay, sounds good, sweetie. They went into Paul's bedroom and had super hot sex. Paul watched from the window, tears mixing with the sweat of a hard day's practice. He fell to his knees. No. The rest of the football team was there too. Jim, Paul's best friend, put a hand on his shoulder. Come on, that's for babies. Let's go play football. Paul smiled through his tears and wiped his nose on his varsity jacket. Jim helped him up, and they all played two-hand touch on the front lawn. The blinds were wide open, and every now and then he would look over and see them still having sex. He would mumble, whatever, I don't care, and turn his attention back to the game. Paul would later die in Afghanistan.
Give me a second because I'm still recovering from that last line, okay? John,
That
this
was
is so
incredible.
fucking
That
funny.
was ridiculous.
Thanks.
You completely annihilate all of the fucking cliches of that kind of story, and you do it so quickly, right? Like just like boom, 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 like one fucking punchline after another. Every single like high school coming of age teen drama cliche, you just fly through them like they're fucking bullets coming out of a machine gun, and it is so funny. I was choking. And then the end like under or I see S in the chat. Are there S for Paul in the chat?
There are.
Anyway, the end is so good because it's like that the last bullet like has reality like in it, right? The punchline is like the terrible reality of like how the teenage years usually end. Sometimes end for people. Okay, I'm done. Rudy, I see you were trying to say something.
No, I just that was really awesome, and some of the like the double-edged like turns of phrase, like when he sees him fucking through the window, he's like, "That's for babies." Like it's just like, man, oh man, so good, so fucking awesome.
Oh, thank you.
That was just fucking hilarious, John. Thank you so much.
I just want to ask, I immediately thought of Stephen Miller, the Trump fascist. Was that him?
No,
It is for me.
No, that's not.
I don't want to hear. It worked. That's how it worked for me beautifully. Okay. That's why I put Stephen with a PH in there. All right. That's all I want to hear. Okay. For me, it was, and it was wonderful.
Is that
I don't know who Stephen Miller is.
Okay.
Is that the speechwriter guy or the?
Yeah, he's the one that
Okay,
orchestrated all the racist policies. Right. He's
Okay.
Oh,
Yeah. Okay. Young
Thank you,
guy.
John.
Young
That was
guy.
wonderful. Up next is Derek, I think. Let me make sure I didn't. Yeah, Derek's next.
Can you hear me all right?
Loud and clear.
Awesome. That was really, really, really fucking good. That was one of the best things that I've heard someone reading so long. Like I'm trying to like maintain my composure to read my short thing here. This is what is it called? This is called Six Turtles at a Crossing. I drove to the DQ Grill and Chill at or around 11 a.m. By 7 p.m., I was on the news. I just sat there. I brought several books with me to pass the time. At the drive-thru, I ordered a small vanilla Butterfinger Blizzard. I pulled up to the first window, locked my doors, and rolled the windows up, read, and did not move for 5 hours. I brought several books to read, not knowing what mood I might be in. I brought 60 Stories by Donald Bartholomew. The first story was about margins. It bored me. I decided it was too highbrow for me. The honking comes first and eventually fades into the landscape of things. Next, I read an essay on the color blue. Disgusting. I closed my eyes. It's been like this for some time now, whatever this is. My children are at school. My wife is at work. My phone is at home. The doors are locked. My windows are rolled up, and people are screaming at me and banging away at the glass. I am meditating. I read a story about cocaine and another about a murder. The first of the first responders arrives shortly after noon. Some moments of your life just weigh more than others, and some moments less. I wanted to exist today. I wanted to prove to myself that I existed today. I wanted a memory to sear, to announce to the world that I exist today. I wanted an act to be archived, to convince a future world existing without me that I once existed within it and it within me. I put my car into park in the drive-through line of the DQ Grill and Chill and sat and waited for the world to reply. The locksmith came around 2 p.m. The negotiator kept yelling, "What are your demands?" My wife arrived at 3:15, frowning. My children looked small and frightened. I read a story about a waiter. My grandmother once sat in a car with the doors locked and the windows rolled up before I was born in her garage. I was arrested at 4 p.m. My car was towed. My books were confiscated. My wife was angry. My children were confused. My parents were kept in the dark. My work was informed I had a stomach bug. I closed my eyes and tried to forget anything was happening. She closed her eyes and waited for it all to end. I have a right to remain silent.
Holy shit, Derek. Holy fucking shit. So you man, like, it's great that this piece followed John's, right? Because they're structured similarly, but the obviously, like, the reversal on yours is like so much more personal, right? But it's the same thing where the first chunk of it is so funny and is like such an absurd satire of what I imagine what I kind of remember being on the other side of this as a kid, like being in a hectic family environment and wanting to just find a way, being so desperate for like space and privacy that you that you do something like that. You'd go to the fucking drive-thru and roll the windows up. But then like the end with like the callback to your grandmother's suicide, which has come up here in the past, you know, that image fits so perfectly in this story and is so tonally jarring that it really pulls the rug out from under everything that came before, and it's really fucking effective.
Thank you, man. Thanks a lot.
Is this being published somewhere?
I put this out to some places a couple weeks ago, so we'll see. Eventually, at some point,
Cool.
Hopefully, yeah. I think it's done. At first, I thought it was weird that it was that short. I usually don't write super short, but it kind of is. It's kind of like, you know, what can you do in the drive-thru? Like, there's only a few things. You know, he's not going to order fries at the end or anything.
Right. No, it's a perfectly structured piece of flash fiction. I don't think it needs to be any longer. That one paragraph does everything it has to do. It's fucking awesome, Derek. Thank you so much. Yeah, Tyler mentioned Vonnegut's mother's suicide, and I didn't even think of that, Tyler, but that's a good like parallel here. I remember oh my God, Breakfast of Champions is my favorite Vonnegut novel, and especially the way that he handles that in that novel is really effective. Anyway, thank you, Derek. Jesse, you're up next.
Okay, can you hear me?
Perfectly.
All right. I'm going to read a short story that I put up on my Substack, but then I withdrew it pretty quickly because a friend of mine said you should really try to submit this places instead of having it on your own blog or whatever. It's called Dairy Fairy. I'm checking rat. I don't have a link for it, by the way. It's just going to be me reading it. I'm checking rat traps in the warehouse perimeter where barrels of tocopherol are stacked on pallets when I hear the gunshots. Hysterical shouting. Sneakers squeaking against the damp factory floor. I debate whether to come out or stay there behind the rows of pallets. There's an exit several cavernous rooms over the bay where the milk trucks come in, get unloaded. If I get out, I just have to make it across the lawn in the darkness, climb over the chain link fence, then I'm free. Another gunshot, then another. Sounds different, so there must be two guns. It hits me. Must be Rochi and Don. Not hard to sneak a couple guns into the plant at shift change at 10 p.m. Rochi and Don lived together. They were easy targets for Buck's relentless insinuations they were fags. They'd clearly had enough of Buck's shit. Rochi, the smarter of the two, could have talked Don into jumping off the Empire State Building if he wanted. I peeked my head around the corner, smell blood. Joel Blizzard lay there, bleeding to death. He's wearing a hairnet and the regulation white clothing of the dairy processing plant, but the clothes are all red. He made it 10 feet into the warehouse before collapsing. There's no milk truck in the bay. The garage door's been closed. If I try to open it, it'll make too much noise. I head up the metal staircase to the control room. There's phones up there. Thinking about my wife and kid, daughter just 3 months old. I had thought about quitting to be with Emily and the baby when she was born, but I figured I needed the money. Up in the control room, 4 dead bodies, one with its jaw hanging off its skull on the floor. I try the phone, no dial tone, destroyed. On the upper floor, trying to get it to another phone, walking back to the quality control lab where normally I analyze milk samples for antibiotics and do microbiology. Stop right there, Don says. It's got a huge automatic. He's wearing some sort of harness with extra magazines attached to it. You don't want to do this, Don. Don't you tell me about me, he says. Get over here and get downstairs. With the gun in my back, he takes me down into the packaging room where all the milk and half and heavy cream is put into gallons, quarts, pints. More dead bodies in this room, including Buck, all headshots. All the women and black people are laying there dead. There weren't many women or people of color, but they must have decided to eliminate them first. 7 or 8 factory workers lined up against the wall, all guys from Walton, 20 minutes away. I see John L's sympathetic, scared eyes looking back at me. He once told me I was guilty of indecent exposure because I had no hubcaps on my Volkswagen. Showing your nuts, he said at the time, flashing horrible teeth. Rochi, punched in the center of the room by the packaging machine, has got some sort of automatic machine gun with a strap around his shoulder. He's wearing fingerless gloves. If it isn't the science officer, Rochi says, we've been waiting for you. He uses the gun barrel to gesture John L. forward. Then he beckons another worker, Millard Axelrod, into the room. Got about 5 hours till shift change, Rochi says, and we're going to find out who the toughest hombre in here. Who is the toughest hombre in here? When I say fight, you fight. If you win, I'll let you live. Of course. Weeks ago, he was in the quality control lab looking for clear plastic petri dishes, large ones with lids. He and Don had caught 2 enormous spiders outside the factory, and for their amusement, he was going to seal them inside with each other. When they got hungry or starved for air, they'd fight each other to the death. Rochi said he did this in Bosnia when he was in the army. I've seen boxing matches. I've never seen anything like this. Millard wins the first round. He habitually wears cowboy boots on the factory floor. Of course he wins. After 3 rounds of fighting, the floor is spattered with blood. 3 losers, 3 gunshots. Jimmy, who ate my apple out of the cafeteria fridge once, tries to make a run for it, is taken down with a shot directly between the shoulder blades. My turn to fight next. I'm always up there in the lab, all my beakers, test tubes, science, they all know it. How much fighting spiders in me, really? My final goal, surprise everybody.
Sorry, Jesse, I didn't want to
That's it.
interrupt you.
It's over.
Okay. That oh my God, Jesse, that is so tense. And it's so this is like a perfectly structured like thriller, right? And what really works for me are all the little like flashbacks to like workplace normalcy that happen over the course of this thing when the narrator is remembering like little basically like little slights that occurred in the past, and the way they're kind of sprinkled throughout here just really like, on the one hand, like the indecent exposure hubcap thing, like you can see on the one hand those moments are funny, but also you see exactly the kind of like asshole that guy was, and the kind of like like subtle workplace tensions that you at any workplace that exists, you sprinkled them throughout in a way that I think like provides clarity to why this shit is happening. Like I don't know, I think that it's really really well delivered, and the entire thing is so tense. And I think your friend made the right call. You really should submit this somewhere. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Jesse. So much. So, sorry, I'm a little tongue-tied, but the only person left on the docket right now is Rudy. So before Rudy reads, if anyone would like to go after him, we have time for I am so tongue-tied. We have time for a substantial open mic tonight. So if anyone would like to read, now is the time. Just say in the chat and you can go after Rudy. Rudy, how's it going, man?
Okay, good. I'm going to put the link in the chat.
I've got it.
Okay. I'm gonna post I'm gonna post it on, I've got the Twitter, so I'm gonna post it on Twitter as well. So this is a story that I came up with. Actually, I woke up to a dream. Oh, whoops, sorry, I didn't mean to try to record. I don't know. But I had a dream that basically Brandon and a friend of Brandon, whom we both know, pulled me off with some person in a bar fight. Which is a strange dream for me. Not at all like my normal dreams, but basically the bar fight started because of some kind of weird perception that I had that, and I was going to beat this guy to death because like I thought that he was responsible for something that he couldn't be responsible for due to some kind of time and space thing. And I woke up and basically like I just wrote this at like 2:30 in the morning. So sorry for this. All right, so this is called The Time or the Place. Jill is my Martian girlfriend who was raped in the bathroom of the Chucker bar by a big black dude. Now, I say the assailant was big, bigger than me, mostly to excuse myself in my mind, but that's bullshit because what does that mean to Jill, who was raped? I say in the bathroom of the Chucker bar, but to Jill, it might as well have been in the men's locker storage area, the women's locker storage area, in the jean trough, or on the dance floor because Jill's Leon senses collapse time and space in a way that makes it possible to her that she was raped in 4 different places at once. I say by A, but Jill experiences nonlinear perception of time and space, a result of trauma, not her Martian heritage. Well, look, that's not entirely true. because her Martian heritage is what, in fact, allows her to experience nonlinear time in the first place. But most Martians experience that as an absence of time, if that makes any sense, as opposed to what she experiences currently, which is more like something in an early 2010 science fiction film, which is maybe like multiple time streams. I guess it's kind of like God the Father, if there is one, and he shoots craps at a dirty local Martian-owned casino, peeing into the universal handicap access toilet and splitting his stream, time as we know it, into 10 to the 20th power distinct streams, all curved to cut the same piece of shit in the toilet, which is us, into two different pieces, but in multiple different ways. And now I've lost my train of thought. But the point is, she's traumatized from living with some earthling, me, who inadvertently, purposefully encroached on her Martian perception reality of time and overrode it with nonsense from our sci-fi past. Therefore, this event, her being raped, was in her perception played out over multiple iterations of tonight. Oh. And because of collapsed space, was watched or at least perceived by multiple people, not the least of whom is me, a cowardly man with an asterisk, in a way that made literally everyone in that bar culpable. A fact which Jill strikingly communicates to me during an iteration of tonight where she erodes the bartender's flesh with space-time leveling curvy judgment for his perceived crime of not stopping the assault. Ooh, I say black dude, but first of all, that's a lie on my end, an outright fabrication that kind of betrays how I feel about my masculinity compared to the culturally monolithic big black buck stereotype. I didn't see the assailant. Maybe they were Hispanic, maybe they were female or gender non-conforming, but also black is irrelevant because while he was raping her, he would have had to remove her veiling, which he chooses to wear to square her perception of time and space with the physicality of three-dimensional man space where humans can live. And this would have, due to sciencey things that I don't fully understand, created a black hole where everything is black and I'm told varying degrees of red or blue, like my mood, as light is trapped by the gravity of my girlfriend being defiled. I say was, but I'm not sure why, because what is time when you're caught approaching the event horizon of a black hole? True Chicago vibes, and I wish I was in Chicago asking some earthling, girl or dude, to give me the time, which they wouldn't. And I've always wanted something more exotic than. It's why my grandparents came up here on Musk's Big Dumb Rocket, which, like the Our Lady Peace song, is basically a weird story about a dangerous weapon to me at this point. So it's no surprise I was totally head over heels for a warmly volatile Martian who doesn't share a whole lot in common with me, but I still love dearly. And hey, at least we can talk about the weather, which just amounts to saying it's bad at any given time. And I say is, but frankly, I'm not sure Jill is still my girlfriend now that I basically allowed her to be raped by some black dude in front of everyone. And I've seen how that's made her all empty and dark. Well, not really seen because there's no light in a black hole, but truly it must be empty. I say Martian, but Jill could easily be from Europa or somewhere farther, and I don't know much about space-time, but this the point in my life where I'm unspooling in the death spiral created by a traumatic event? Is this the time or the place to wax philosophical? Because if so, I just want to say that Mars is kind of beautiful, but also harsh, like Jill, and we never should have come to Mars for that and other reasons. But I'm glad we did so that I could experience being torn into 1 million particulate pieces with her. And I'm glad for everything. And also, I love Jill so much, especially when she's literally turning herself upside down and inside out. She's quivering, making waves, and right now I gotta say I'm harder than Shane Carruth. Sorry for TMI, I'm just breaking down. I say Jill, but I guess that's a heavily anglicized or romanticized or acronymized version of the name. Why am I even worried about words? Sounds slurring into collapsing nothingness at this point. But still, I repeat her name and girlfriend in my head, sub-vocalizing, because that's the only way I can speak, since I'm afraid of opening my mouth in the void if that's where I'm at without any protection. I regret saying my, although one of my me's somewhere at some point in time might be proudly screeching it. Mine, 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 like the fat governor with the pug dog in Pocahontas. I'm losing any sense of ownership over Jill or whatever the fuck her name is. I'm losing any sense of responsibility or whatever the fuck that is. I'm losing connection. I'm being totally destroyed, vaporized, annihilated, and not in the Christian sense, not in any tangible sense. I'm not on Mars or anywhere. I lie still. Why am I still saying I? And while lying still, this never lost energy that was male, allegedly, is curving serpentine with the flow of space and eating itself like Ouroboros, or a simpler pet with similar thermoregulation issues. And that's it.
God fucking damn, Rudy. God fucking damn. That's so fucking excellent.
Great stuff, man. Great stuff.
Oh,
Killer,
thank
stuff, dude.
Thank you. I aspire to be as good as Jake, your time travel story, which I can't because that one was so fucking awesome. But man, yeah, I don't know. I just woke up with this weird thought, and that's what it turned into. One thing is it was kind of, the story is basically juxtaposing like the confusion of something like an account of like sexual assault, which is oftentimes influenced by like gaps in memory or continuity caused by trauma or time that's passed, or just outright interference from perpetrators with like a supernatural or cosmic event or something like that. That's what it's supposed to be kind of getting at. And the way like the narrator like mixes their own biases into that, and it's just, yeah. Sorry.
Man, I told you this before when you showed this piece to me, but I love the way I love the way this piece is structured. Of course, I love the way this piece is structured because it's meta as shit, right? Like this entire story is really contained within one sentence. It's a deconstruction of one sentence while like the narrator himself is being deconstructed, right? While he's being torn apart on an atomic level by this black hole. And while his whole sense of perception and reality is being deconstructed, like structurally, this is a perfect story. Structurally, this is like divine because every single piece locks together perfectly and points at every single other piece, right? I don't know. I think this is fucking fantastic. I think this is one of your best like short stories, definitely.
Cool. Yeah. Thanks, man.
Yeah. So Dan, just so you know, I got your direct message. I don't think that Eris read your poem at a past one. So if you would like to read it, I know you said you don't have time tonight. Just shoot us a DM and I'll put you on the docket for next week. Does anyone else have? Oh, Blick, do you want to read the piece you just put in the chat? And Brandon has something.
Yeah, Brandon Harley reads. I love his stuff. Can I hear Brandon?
Yeah, Brandon will go first. You can go after him, Blick, because we've got plenty of time tonight still.
All right.
Just a quick kind of almost stream of consciousness thing. So I got dose number 3 of Pfizer this week, and this is kind of what led to this being written. No title, nothing. So every morning when I wake, I immediately wish that I hadn't. This is not some errant death urge. This is not some suicidal drive. It is merely an acknowledgement of knowing that another day has begun that I never consented to. Suicide isn't the way out. It's just an overly dramatic timeout that only puts yourself in stasis until the next time you were meant to leave. Trapped in the same physical and emotional pain that drove you to call for your reprieve. But it is no reprieve at all. My displeasure with awakening each day is because it provides nothing but false hope. I never agreed to return here. I never agreed to be born again. My conception was not my idea. Oftentimes I remind myself of how close I came to avoiding this trip around the sun, of how I was regarded as a 50-50 chance of being someone with a normal life in the first place. I won that coin flip, but the prize was a normal life, and I think I'd have preferred hitting that $2 scratch off prize pool. I won the normal life, but it has been a boring one, unlike any of the others that at least had to contend with the reality of the world. Modern comforts are no consolation to a soul that remembers the truth. I've wanted the peace of the afterlife for centuries, maybe longer, but I keep coming back to this. I don't know why, certainly not by choice. The world has become the perfect allegory for the hometown you leave behind. It only gets worse every time you come back to visit. Things change, people change, the natural wonders slowly vanish, and the man-made substitutes decay. At least if I'd have lost the coin flip, this would have been a short trip home. And that's it.
I'm intrigued by this piece. I think I really like the way it's structured, and I really like the intimacy of it. I think it's like more psychologically intimate than a lot of your pieces, but I want to see more of it. Like I get the sense that of like, I don't know, that like that you allude to a kind of greater cosmic cycle going on here, right? Whether this is like Buddhist reincarnation or whether this is some like ancient being like cosmic evil or something returning to Earth and being reincarnated and trapped in some kind of cycle. Like what's alluded to there, I think is really interesting. And I like the way that you've married that with this kind of like more mundane kind of day-to-day despair. And I think you need to flesh it out and really get at that, because I think there's something there.
Yeah, I might work with it.
Absolutely. Thank you,
It
man.
was a fun little piece to work on.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you, man. And next, Blick, and then after Blick, Gabe has a piece.
This is, yeah, that should definitely be expanded. I love that, man. I was just pulled through, and I was just disappointed when it stopped. Yeah, that's some salvo shot. All right, I wasn't going to read anything tonight, but there's this anthology came out I like a lot. It's called Adult Children, being one, having one, and one goes in between. And there's a great graphic, looks like a Misery Loves Company graphic that has a naked woman. No sooner had you created me than I ceased to be yours. So anyway, so this is a story based on a Ephracris. It's published on there. It's this great photograph by this friend of mine that I met like 40 years ago in Morocco, photographer. And he took this shot of his son, and the shot was so haunting that I came up with this story. And I was surprised that the story works without the photo, but they took it in here. It's called Hans's Solo. I've had this recurring bridge dream for nearly 15 years. It first appeared one night after being exhausted by cramped studying for my bar mitzvah. In this initial fantasy, I was a swaddled infant left on the very beginning of a long and twisting walkway through a vibrant yet desolate forest. I was crying, and there was blood from my breasts seeping, breasts, I guess, I'm not Jewish, breasts seeping through the forest. I was crying, we don't need to dig up Freud from his grave to figure out I was about to undergo a ritual of manhood. So I must have been thinking about the genital mutilation that first signaled my acceptance into the tribe. What's quite disturbing about this recurring dream, as it appears today, is that after 14 years of experience I've only moved forward incrementally from the bloody infant that was first placed on the forest path into a 6-year-old boy that balks at moving forward. In the real world, I'm about to turn 28. My name's Han because my parents are both Star Wars freaks, and the worship of this film series is the only real religion practiced in my household. They obviously were not the only disciples. When I was in pre-K, there was another boy named Han, as well as a girl named Leah. What's strange about my abandoned boy at the bridge recurring dream is that it's always just a prologue to whatever else I'll be dreaming that night. This winding walkway always introduces whatever anxious or peaceful visions my brain has decided to focus on that night. Nightmare, erotic ecstasy, exciting adventure, idyllic beauty. These days in my dream, I'm a first grader who's really hesitant about moving forward, but I also see it as my feet turning into the classic ballet fourth position. My mother taught ballet for years, so perhaps my foot position on the bridge is not to her. Once again, I don't need to disinter Freud to figure out that this bridge snakes into a representation of my life's journey. By the way, did you know that babies double their birth size by age 5 months? Yet in my recurring dream, I remain a crying, bleeding infant for years. No physical growth, no emotional growth. I'm a bit confused about relationships with women. My testosterone tells me to be more aggressive and not to feel so shy and unworthy. I'm always terrified of saying the wrong thing. In high school, I didn't really have a girlfriend because I always hung out with a circle of friends that were both males and females. Most activities were communal, not individual dates. Recently, I joined a dating app called Bumble. On Bumble, only women can initiate first contact, which I like because it reduces the stress of rejection. Yet I've been registered on this app for 5 months and have yet to receive a single hit. I'm presently undergoing EDMR, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing therapy, which also includes hand tapping, listening to ambient sounds like ocean waves via headphones that seesaw these sounds from ear to ear to promote a kind of oral hypnosis. One of the side effects of this treatment is that it can cause vivid, realistic dreams. While my recurring dream happened years before I entered therapy. My therapist insists I keep a journal between sessions in order to maintain the session's progress she insists is occurring. My shrink Martha works for the VA, but please don't think I'm some sort of veteran war hero suffering from PTSD. I never even enlisted in a war against Christmas. Yet I've never known a world without suicide bombings, school shootings, and acts of terrorism that take place in my backyard, not in some distant land. Martha is also an ordained Lutheran pastor, but she never mentions God in any of our sessions. I tell Martha I'm so sick of reading, hearing why millennials can't grow up. My shrink calls it a first world problem, not unique to young men my age. I am depressed and anxious all the time, but don't know why. I'm always smiling and laughing at jokes I don't think are funny, so people won't discover how unhappy I feel. I feel like I'm faking everything. Being an adult to me means doing things you enjoy doing. Yet that's nuts because my parents still act like kids at Star Wars conventions. Why am I so miserable? I had everything I was supposed to need while growing up. Emotional and financial security, a good education, and now I have a more than decent paying job. I do feel guilty that there are so many less fortunate than me, and know it is unmanly to be constantly sad. Every day there's somebody crying out what privileged assholes we millennials are. So I always feel pressured to pretend I'm happy. My shrink says I should spend less time surrounding myself with people, more time being alone, even if it means being bored at first. But I can't relax by myself. I tried all different kinds of things, but I can't slow down my goddamn anxious thoughts. I've tried drugs, porn, video games, and even different kinds of meditation. Zen meditation with mindfulness on breathing and intentionally focusing on the moment. Then I did metta meditation to focus on a loving kindness towards myself, as well as empathy for other people. In my final workshop, I studied Sufi meditation to try to achieve mystical union with the Supreme Being. In every class and workshop I've taken, I seem to be the only one who can't obtain this metaphysical knowledge and peace. I would often comfort myself in class by thinking my fellow students are just bullshitting their enlightenment to try to make me feel like shit. But thoughts like that defeat the entire purpose of meditation, which is to get to know myself and pull away from the outside world to focus on my inner world instead of blaming everyone else for my failure. Do you understand how fucked up a person I am? Hell, I even get sad deleting old tweets because it feels like I'm flushing away a big part of who I was and who I am. Last month, Martha suggested I try using a weighted blanket that applies deep pressure touch. She says it stimulates the feeling of being comforted, like a swaddled baby, and it's supposed to help my insomnia and anxiety. So instead of fighting my anxieties like a real man, I retreat into acting like a fucking baby again, all tucked inside my crib beneath a blanket with 30 pounds of pellets sewn into it. So far, it hasn't worked. When I asked Martha how she arrives at the concept of what exactly my emotional age is, she turns the question back on me and asks me, what do I believe is my emotional age? I tell her I don't know anything except first, my dick is snipped at birth, and then as I advance in life, I have my balls constantly broken by social proclamations that I must be successful. I worry I'll never live up to my own expectations. I grew up being told I could be anything I wanted to be, but I'm coming to realization that I'm not as smart, talented, or special as I thought I was, and that fuels an obsession with having to succeed. My friends and I seem to be growing up poorer than our parents. My mom and dad can afford to go to Star Wars conventions all over the world, but my important travel plans are still handcuffed by student loans. I get incredibly stressed over not being able to find a Wi-Fi spot forgetting passwords or online accounts, the buffering sign when I'm streaming online. It's like taunting me that my life is going in circles, like the areola of a maternal tit. I stress when unable to find my TV remote just as my favorite Netflix show is starting. Why am I unable to advance past the stage of 6 in my recurring dream? Is it because I'm a victim of helicopter parenting? During my childhood, my mom and dad hovered over every experience and problem I had growing up. Cell phones are the longest umbilical cords in the world. I was taught to be afraid of strangers, playing sports, sexual contact. Is that why they claim we millennials act more like children than adults? This outburst of self-pitying is very tiring, so I'm going to disappear under my state-of-the-art weighted blanket and hope tonight is the night it crushes my recurring dream of being a child stranded on a spooky bridge inside a dying primeval forest. And if my heavy blankie is unable to extinguish the dream, perhaps when I wake up, I will have at least gained a year of emotional age. So I'll be a 7-year-old boy on that walkway, just 3/4 away from achieving my true age of 28. Okay. Thanks.
Blake, as a millennial, excuse me, I think you really captured like the weird, unique kind of millennial malaise in this piece, like the burden of like expectation and anxiety. And I love the dream, and I love the idea of like a gateway dream, a dream that so like completely captures.
Did you see the picture? Did you see the photo?
You know what? I didn't. Let me take
You got to see that photo. I tell you something. Everything for this goes to that photo. That photo that this guy took.
Oh wow! Shit, I'm looking at it now.
If it wasn't for that photo, I took that photo. And here's a funny thing with this guy, because he's an older father and his proud son, and he thought I was going to write a sweet story. And when I first wrote this story and sent it to him, he kept on asking me, did you get the story done? Did you get the story again? Did you get the story done? And I didn't, because I didn't know how to fucking approach it. So finally, when I did, and I sent it to him, and he was asking, 3 or 4 days, nothing went by. I said, shit, this son of a bitch is going to tell me that he doesn't want it because it's insulting his son, you know?
Yeah.
And then luckily, some editor just then picked it up and slapped it into that. Into the first time it was published in that thing I gave you. So when I sent it to him, and because it was published, he let it go. But I know for a fact, because he was bugging me, and then the silence for 4 or 5 days. So it was a lot of fun.
That's funny. And that's the thing, though. Like, you have to be careful, like when you hand your shit over to an artist, right? To a writer, you can't. Like, people always, people are like, I don't like to share my shit with people like who I know personally, right? Because if you're writing fucking honestly, you're probably not writing a very flattering piece, right? Either you're showing yourself in an unflattering light, or you're showing your subject in an unflattering light, or whatever. So I would never like hand a picture. If I had a kid, I would never like hand a picture of my
but he
kid.
wanted to. He wanted to collaborate with me, and so you know, and I thought it was, you know, I thought his picture. He's a great photographer.
Yeah,
and
it's a fantastic picture.
Yeah, I thought it was extraordinary. But because he's an older father, you know, like you know, my kids are in their 30s, right? He's not much younger than me, and this kid is still. So he's an older father. So it's like it was a weird dynamic. So
yeah, I imagine. But yeah, no, that's a fantastic piece, Blake. Thank you.
Yeah, I really like the way it goes with the image, because that image, it looks like one of those places like we have a place up here called the Vic, the Interpretive Center, where it's like you walk through the woods, and like there's this trail called the Heron Marsh, I think, that goes over the marsh, and they have one of those bridges like that in the piece. And that, like, the idea of like dreams like initiating from like an image, or dreams initiating from a seed dream kind of is a really cool idea. I really like that you put into there, because that goes perfect with that image. It's like,
it took me a while to get to that. That's at Arcadia State Forest.
Okay,
Yeah.
All
right. Well, thanks, man.
Yeah, Rudy, when I saw that picture, I immediately thought of the Vic as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, thank you, Blake. That was fantastic. And Gabe is next, and then Adam has some poems. And we'll still have a little bit of time after that. If anyone else has a piece they want to read, just put it in the chat. Okay, Gabe, it's all yours.
Rudy's piece tonight kind of made me think, I guess inspired me to revisit this old sci-fi story I wrote. Our local bookstore, Space Cowboy, put this out in their anthology. I just kind of want to see how it holds up. It's been like a couple years since I've looked at it, but it's called Through the Raven's Eyes. A suffocating hush choked out the anxious, bustling chatter at the control consoles at the NASA Kennedy Space Center. It spread like a silencing wave to the farthest operative corners of the large room as its blinks, bleeps, and bloops continued on, almost mocking the severity of the scene unfolding. This wave then ebbed backwards to its origin. Don Nichols, who had his hand turned towards his co-workers to communicate a halt to all talk. There's no signal, this is bad, he continued. These small seconds of silence may need to graduate to one proper morning minute. This tragedy would finally spill the beans to the public regarding NASA's clandestine branch of its airtight guarded shadow missions as they watched their longest standing prospect fail, this time fatally. Years back in 2014, after successfully passing Pluto and its moon system, the ever-enduring Voyager 1 had finally cleared the ice-laden Kuiper Belt into the farthest reaches of our solar system. Concurrently with its launch in 1977, in an experimental effort to test human mortality and endurance in our ever-accelerating times, NASA had created a top-secret, potentially kamikaze-style manned spacecraft called the Rado Raven. Rado stood for Rocket-Assisted Takeoff, a term coined by Jack Parsons, who drew the blueprints for the craft before his explosive demise in 1952. The Rado Raven was the first vessel of subsequent NASA shadow missions, the idea being to see if human passengers could potentially outwit and repair any folly that may befall the Voyager 1 not far ahead of them. The Raven's collective human soul and mere proximity would be the key driving force behind this controversial logic. Beyond the tech advancements, the crew would come to inherit, learn, and utilize from the ever-evolving Earth behind them. A crew of 10 young, daring upstarts had been trained for this since their infancy in order to accommodate their lifespans in relation to their undetermined length of the mission. Force-fed an education that would erase their childhoods, they would finally blast off in the demure primer black Raven into the black of space, undetectable to sight but not to radar. It was launched on September 5th, 1977, tandem in time with Voyager 1, though not location. Rado Raven flew from Groom Dry Lake in Nevada, known to most as Area 51, where these shadow missions continue to be launched today. Unfortunately, to most conspiracy theorists, the disappearance of Rado Raven would also expose nothing beyond Area 51's simple commitment to unorthodox space exploration, debunking any arcane, egg-headed notions of alien autopsies there existed on Earth or beyond. While it was launched from Nevada, the mission's monitoring would eventually be inherited by a special team at Kennedy Space Center in Florida, where they witnessed the unceremonious end to the Raven's 43-year-old path in stifling depression, confusion, and defeat. Don Nichols stood mannequin still, hunched over his console, his head hanging low like overripe fruit about to drop. Of all the 20-year-old men who first boarded the Raven for their ambitious mission of no return, only one had divided his training enough to let the distraction of love into his heart. But when Thomas Miller eloped with his wife, Judy, a month before the blastoff, they both knew it was more symbolic than legal binding, an anchor to keep them connected in mind rather than body. The two were young enough to still be seduced by the delusions of lifelong romance. It was easier for Judy to justify such a potentially morbid commitment to an invisible husband after her mother reassured her in context. "It's not much different than when your father went to war and I thought I might never see him again," she said. "Only Thomas is about to embark on the single most ambitious call of duty the world has ever known. Imagine, you'll be the only wife on Earth that can carry that distinction." Thomas's main area of expertise was radio communication. It would be his focus to upgrade the Raven's signal through the years, with assistance of another team at JPL since Voyager was unarmed and finite in its capabilities. To include Judy in his isolated professional life, he taught her everything he knew about astro communication, often as he himself learned. This helped forge a bond between them that they hoped would stretch through the stars. He built her state-of-the-art radio telescope, helping her devise a special code only the two of them would know and use. In the backyard of their standalone Nevada home, 20 miles outside Pahrump, Nevada. Don Nichols was Thomas's best friend since childhood. Don would keep in close contact with Judy and assist her with the upgrades to her dish through the years, so she could continue receiving messages from her husband. always erratic, often fragmented and difficult to piece together. The radio communication with Thomas gave their long-distance marriage a sense of adventure, intrigue, and surprise when she would receive a message. While not for everyone, this curious union managed to fill enough of a void to keep Judy steadfast to never marry again. Don slowly shook his dangling head and opened his eyes after 2 long minutes. I've got to call Judy. Judy Miller jumped a bit when she heard the landline ring. She didn't get phone calls often, as her support system consisted of 2 local ladies her age, and hoped it wasn't Don calling this early. It could only be bad news. She prepared herself. Hello, this is Judy. Judy, Don here. He paused. Judy, Tom's gone. The ship has vanished the way of the Voyager. I think this is it. I can't process it, and I'm sorry to have to be the one to tell you. Judy? Judy, are you there? She gently put the phone back on the hook as she went slack-jawed, catatonic. Remembering she had an apple in her hand, she took another forced, apathetic bite. She stared out the window at the desert nothingness to fiend for some epiphany of time and cycles of life and death and disintegration and reincarnation and how everything is exactly how it's supposed to be. She got nothing in return. Then she felt guilty for the unspeakable sub-emotions she entertained. Was she finally free of a lifetime of empty loyalty? Or was Thomas dead to her the second he kissed her goodbye in September of 1977? As Judy grieved in myriad of ways, she felt both shame and confusion. That Thomas's heroic passing didn't feel much different than him not being there in the flesh anyway. It was impossible to reconcile. Exhausted from the confounded nature of mourning, she fell asleep into the arms of darkness as the sun set through the window behind her. She awoke to the sound of the console receiving a message from the dish pointed to the heavens. This time she really jumped, running over to the desk. It was Thomas? Did this mean he was alive? Judy. Never before have I prayed harder you would receive a message from me as this one, as I don't know where me and the crew's fate stands. I'm writing, above all, to let you know I love you and always will, no matter what happens. We have lost control of our ship's path and are being pulled towards a beam of light larger than I could ever describe. I can only assume we will perish there, as we see clusters of debris bursting into flames as it reaches its, well, surface, I guess. I can tell I love you in a million different ways, but I need to spend some time letting you know exactly what I've pieced together out here, as I can only trust you will believe me. If I told Don or anyone at NASA, it would seem the ravings of a madman. So since you had the courage to take this leap of faith when you married me 40 years ago, I know you have the courage to suspend your belief in everything we have been taught about our universe. After we passed the unspeakable vastness of the Kuiper Belt, we saw a tangible curve slightly demurred in the distance. Now, Judy, I hope you don't think I'm obscene, but it resembled a perfect crystalline depiction of, well, I don't want to say depiction because, Judy, it was a detailed version of a woman's genitalia. Now, I didn't see this as much as I was given a psychic download of information from God knows where, as if my mind was trying to make sense of something that was larger than I could conceive. And this, well, gigantic vagina is how I pieced it all together. Yet it was reversed, as if we were about to leave. Now stay with me here, please. All of a sudden, like in dreams, where there at times seems to be an alternate parallel understanding into something you're experiencing for the first time, this information continued to download into me, though it felt like it was inside me already for my whole life. Do you remember that time we did LSD together? It was a lot like that, when we felt that oneness, that cellular connection with everything. But the specific answer has been bestowed onto me now. It came to me as a droning noise, an ohm, if you will. And it was through this buzz of all-encompassing sound that I was given this rapturous information. Sweetheart, I'm writing you from the end of our universe, which is the womb of a celestial feminine cavity inside an even larger inconceivable body. I can confirm this with a unique fusing of my mind, heart, and soul, which only you know the depths of. I began to know that all these clusters of stars, all these distant galaxies are none other than divine ejaculations of future life. It was a mere gut feeling I had until we saw this beam of light approaching, and we now see it emitting endless streams of what I understand to be vaporous carbon. And we can see it all forming into more substantial solids the longer we pay attention, which is difficult because we have lost control and are now being pulled into this light. This might very well be our demise, of us as we know it anyway. But sweetheart, my point is, like all the planets in our system, our Earth is an egg, and I was lucky enough to be formed by the ultimate culmination of this process and able to sustain us as the only life in the solar system. We are merely Earth's essential bacteria. Only, as we know, bacteria could also turn bad. Humans are on Earth to fertilize the Earth as an egg so it can finally give birth to everything it has to offer from inside. Is it a surprise to you that all of our molten center has the ability to act as a yolk or a fetus to continue the quest for spreading life? We don't know for sure. We haven't been to the center of the Earth because we are too busy exploring space like idiots, Judy. It is my regret to say that all this time we have been going the wrong direction. By exploring space, we're willfully abandoning our true path into the Earth. And the worst part, that we couldn't abort this mission even if we tried. By its very nature, our mission itself is the abortion. And look how the Earth is being treated. Its crust is drying at such accelerated rates, the surface fertilization may never occur. We have found ourselves trying to take care of something stillborn from neglect, the birth of its inside, its soul. Our planet is one of the solar system's last chances. All the other planets seem nearly poisoned by the same process, once inhabited by those like us who didn't know the glory of where they stood and neglected it as such. Whether it created atmospheres of suffocating gas, thousand-year storms, or an arid wasteland where no water could form, it was a result of bacteria just like us, turning toxic, destroying one another like the cancer we on Earth would later not only create, suffer from, but also emulate. Sure, we multiplied, but at too fast of a rate to really to realize our one job on Earth. We mutated rather than grew. Homogeneous mirror images of each other, making the same mistakes. And on those other planets, the slow evolution of cellular division with the tending of the ground was never to be realized. And as I see the large misshapen boulders of debris burning up in this colossal, glorious phallic-esque beam of light, demonstrating the crew and I's now merciful demise of a mission that was doomed to failure by its very insistence, I think of one man responsible for all this. Jack Parsons, the true Antichrist, the man who created rocket science via black magic, who drew the plans for this craft, a man who would eventually steer us so far off our natural God-given obvious path that only he would convince the citizens of the world that flinging ourselves into the void of outer space would be progress.
Oh, Gabe, I think you just disconnected.
Like God intended.
Oh, my
I'm sorry,
bad. My bad. I think we just hit some lag there. You're here. Sorry about that.
Okay.
You went like God intended.
God intended. Okay. I was supposed to stay with you, Judy. I was supposed to give you a child like God intended to be fruitful. Fourth decade of abandoning my loving wife while forcing her into some charade of hero worship. Here I am floating in space, devolved to a dead sperm, finally being put out of my misery. But Judy, now I can only wish if a miracle finds me and somehow takes me back to Earth and away from this lifetime of counterintuitive nightmare. I vow to make love to you like I never have before. But until that day of never, it is my solemn duty to leave you with this burden of truth. Judy took one more bite of her apple and hung her head, drained from the surreal last dispatch from her phantom husband. She gazed out the window at the vastness of the desert and slowly walked out the door into the backyard. She grabbed the rusted shovel that had leaned against the shed for years, walked to the middle of the yard and jammed it into the ground with all her might. She exclaimed with a primitive grunt, punctuating every stab into the ground until it was a foot deep. Now down to the apple's core, still in her hand, she dropped it into the hole, began to return its soil. Since she knew it wouldn't rain for the rest of the year, Judy finally burst into tears over the hole like a storm with nowhere to go.
Holy shit, Gabe, that rocked. The thing that really hit me about this piece was the like world building, like that. The first few paragraphs there are so meticulously constructed and have such like a sense of real world detail that which I think is like fundamental in a piece like this because it gets so fucking crazy, right? And I think the way that you like create this entirely plausible NASA mission and provide all these little details that make that feel real, allows that incredible monologue that comes at the end and that gets more and more like wild and deranged to work, because you've built, like, the audience believes you've built belief into the audience. And so like the unspooling of reality that happens at the end is like all the more poignant because that reality feels real, right? I don't know, this kicks ass.
Oh, thank you. Do you guys- Oh, I'm sorry, go on.
I was going to say, to me, the unreality kicked ass, but at the end, when she buries that apple core, it brings it back to like something so real. It's a new, like I think I wrote, it's like a new fucking Eden. I love that final image of going to the shed with that shovel, that rusty shovel that was leaning against the shed for years, and she buries the apple core, right? Oh, what an ending.
Yeah, I don't know. It's out of weird instinct. Do you guys, does everyone know about Jack Parsons?
No.
I'm like obsessed. I'm obsessed with that whole thing. Jack Parsons was the guy that created rocket science. He created rocketry basically. And he, like, JPL is Jack Parsons Labs, I think. But yeah, he created rocket science, and he was super neck deep into the occult too. He basically found out he basically was doing a black magic ritual, like weird explosive alchemy, and figured out rocket science from there. So you could argue that warfare as we know it is actually really comes from black magic.
When did this guy live?
Oh, damn.
What's his time frame?
And so yeah, he's
No, but when?
Fascinating. Like
what year? What epoch?
He died in 52.
Uh-huh.
But so he knew Aleister Crowley too. Crowley,
That's what it sounds like. Oh.
Yeah, he would call Aleister Crowley father and stuff. Like that's where he
Wow.
learned. So it's so fucking fascinating. Like
Oh my God.
it's frightening, and it makes so much. I mean, however much credence you want to give to black magic, but he ended up, and Jack Parsons ended up blowing himself up in his own home laboratory. Blew up the whole house.
Oh man.
Wow.
Oh my
shit.
God.
He was always trying to do these rituals,
Yeah.
these black magic rituals with chemistry, with his like whole chemistry setup and stuff. And it was his goal to do this thing called Babylon working, this forbidden ritual that would create what was its name? Basically would make the Antichrist, create a portal for the Antichrist, basically. What was it, like the Moon Child or something weird like that? But yeah, we used to always, there's this place right around the corner from JPL where he established where him and L. Ron Hubbard would actually do all these super sketchy yeah, Jesse, you called it. That was serendipitous.
Wow. Holy
Yeah.
shit.
Wow.
That's
Whoa.
fucking insane. I need to read up more about this.
Yeah, read
Yeah. All right.
if you want to. Yeah, there's a great book called Sex and Rockets. Yeah, he would do all these Jack Parsons would have all these crazy sex orgies at his house. Actually, they made yeah, he was all into sex magic and everything. They made a series about it called Strange Angel.
Oh, huh.
I don't know if you
Oh.
guys saw it, maybe like 3 years ago. Yeah,
Out of
I can't remember what
curiosity,
channel it's on, but
how many years after discovering rocketry did he explode himself?
oh, at least that's a good question. I'd have to look at that up in my book. But he was always trying to outdo his last ritual, basically.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I'm curious if it would be around 10 years.
maybe
Just
why
to fall
is
in
there-
line with a lot of the they sold your soul myths.
Oh shit.
Oh yeah.
Maybe, yeah. I mean, he was obviously really tapping, whether you believe in that shit or not, he was tapping into something
It just
substantially sketchy.
wow. Just real quick, one thing I wanted to say about this story, your story, Gabe, is that like the way it uses like I guess it's radio telemetry or whatever, like the radio signals and all that stuff. And the idea of the suicide spacecraft and stuff in the beginning is fucking amazing. And I love how because like my favorite book is Blind Sight by Peter Watts. and he has like these creatures in there. And I think there's some kind of connection between like radio telemetry and their biology. So like our radio signals are coming out, hitting them, and like they get fucked up by it. And like so, but that the way it's used here is like really awesome. And I love the idea of like how it kind of parallels with like the Voyager launch too, because there's like the Arecibo. That's the one with the Arecibo message or the.
I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I love that parallel. That is so good.
Yeah, I wrote it like 3 years ago. I had to do a lot of kind of crunchy research for it and stuff, but yeah, I guess it holds up well.
I knew Rudy would dig the hard sci-fi angle here. I knew it. But Gabe, thank you. That was fucking awesome.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Adam, and then Calvin said he had a piece. So yeah, I've got a link here to the poems Adam's going to read.
Okay, thanks, William. I DM'd you and said I had 3 or 4, and I sent you 7, so it was a classic bait and switch, but I think they'll be pretty quick. They're all centered on a sort of unreliable character named Larson. So first one's Larson's Underground Caper. Propack prophylactic for heart-sick Larson, snookered eating his beet salad in Moscow. Enlivening the train's departures, some young sylph has given him shingles. All aboard in loud American English, and a bum grabs a handful of rods. Larson don't tattle, though. After all, he's in the Bronx. Larson descends to make rights at garden level, checks the heart of the captain, deduces, plugs his anus something awful, waves off a familiar spider named Bruce, crunches pistachios. Makes heavy way to a floor mattress where he makes do with folded 20s, snaps his fingers. He wants a ligature this time, confirms his safety word. In steps an old saw, Sandy, matches lighting and such. She is redolent of new leather. She has an Adam's apple, a professional. She pockets folded bills. Larson hits dextro, gulps an Aquafina. Half wanting to die in orgasm, he says, "Let's fucking ride." Next one is Larson sees fat lungs. Larson thumbs out a roustabout, maundering beneath his breaths, tongue tucked in onyx, a headache, doesn't want to work, won't. Not like Aesop, Moliere, he wants to be encased in an ancient jar equipped of wine or oil. Wets his palate, Griggs. Mostly a schnapps scene. Does he go? I trow not. He ain't fixing to look for a steady job just yet, he wants French fries. Renaissance people are hideous, says Larson. He is stooling in a McDonald's. In walks Fat Lungs. Counters, drops change, bends. Fat Lungs looks harmless. Truth is, he's a kidnapper. It be up in his brain. It ain't been worked out yet. Larson has not this reckoned with. Fat Lungs lets out chirps, eyes the workers, places his mouth to make the words for milkshake. He is deft and troublesome. Larson turns away. His breath reeks of an auto of schnapps and sodium currents. Larson is miserable. This one's called Larson Awakens Roadside. Cuddled with a non-union employee, wakings up of in a ditch, Larson is spooning, not far from the world of vice. Last night he slang a nasty foot. On the shoulder his caddy is idling. Crumbs up and stands he does, and doesn't, tumbles slightly, shoe tread catching, sways to the door handle that he handles. The other man wakes, pukes, parlays to bum a ride, or attempts. Larson is not charitably disposing himself. His ass is greasy. He wants a Whopper and fries, so singly. He floors it. Citywise, Larson finds a hot dog stand and a double shot of whiskey. Cut and dried, his heart soars. He is now satiated and bisexual. Larson's trip to score. Ear banging streetwalkers oblige him. Larson, that is. He is trash talking. Subsequently, there is a comedy show, but Larson blew his day. He anticipates a late night with Rimbaud, a slut lamp, and Skag Jones. He sees a court officer, a drunk lawyer, making out all of your fidgety, bold naturalisms. The lawyer jets it in a smoke blue range. Larson mumbles, "That cocksucker." Ubers it to Bronxville to see his plug, as his caddy is in the shop. Arrivals of an evening, Larson knows the score to meet blank at the blank, fucking blanks. They buy scallops, copulate, shoot up. Larson is loaded up of smack. Dose is over almost and the like. Fingers beget fingerings. Gets an Uber back to Red Hook, eats pizza, Zines, swigs granddad, takes a shit in an alley, looks meanly at the world of a sudden, sees a car idling, a caddy like a caddy like his, though black, lays down, sucks on its tailpipe as long as he can, gets hollered away, shamed, etc. Sleeps by where he shitted on, the hard rock of the not earthen surface. This one's called Fat Lungs Bleeds Out. Today it rained cats and dogs and Skid Row is not wide and shots in the arm run vertical. Fat Lungs, knowing this, dives down to the tents, plays a short sheet on a dwarf named Ben. Ben takes kindly, then the contrary, starts a whispering campaign of half-truths, as it is known just how perverted Fat Lungs is. He was run out of camp, not least for being a Nazi type. Fat Lungs is a cockroach. Larson sees him at a TJ Maxx, whistles over his shirt, then hides in the women's robes. Fat Lungs is baffled, grunts, begins recon and gives up. A young'un is sucking ranchers, so he sidles up and gets his fix. Larson leaves before Fat Lungs. He is only incidental. Out in the open, Fat Lungs harvests a cab, an army recruit gone stale, most promiscuous. Fat Lungs is in a mood. He makes bilge, proffers nothings sweetly. He wants to make it with the driver, but is extinguished. The cabbie missed a red and made a loud contact with a different vehicle of Motorworks. Fat Lungs wasn't belted. In fact, he was all exsanguinated in the back, and the next day cremated, most discreetly, and for a small fee by a man in flannels who stole his effects. This one's called Amblings. Larson is soaking in a tin drum outside the county, ruffling notes on his vintage recorder, a Peep. He has been into women lately. The next day he goes back to town. He is sour. He accosts certain exquisites, lights up Capri menthols because they was buy one, get one, so half off in the long run. Larson misses his chaplain friend. He was only an intermediate killer. Buzzed, he decides after the bar, the one with cashews. He drives there with his roadie. Down under, he tears into a girl most figuratively and with aplomb speeches and dignities, such as he is capable of. She agrees to a dance. He falls on his face. He wants a man. Gets one, so there's that, replace. Peacocked and tenderloin, Larson asks for his date sign, then barks out a letter, dispatches his pockets skyward, and pulls down his pants in the street. Larson is bearing his whole self on a dotted center line of road. His man has taken off, from Larson tearing up the pea patch. Unaccountably and without reckon, Larson then and there lays down with chortles, a cry, a cuss, and waits for death by bus. The last, I think this is, the last one, Larson's slasher party. There is a knock in the coat of Sneaky Pete. He wants in, pleasing, snazzy colors. Pete is a squarehead from Iowa, not quick on the uptake nor glowing in speech, but he likes vagina and coffee. Larson and Pete perch with schnapps appetizers, watch Silent Night, Deadly Night, 1984. Pete smokes crack, some gaslit 90s queen, back when Mother Superior used to starve his ass. Stirwise Pete is smoked blind, rambling. Larson kneecaps him. Watch this. A girl's on antlers, exsanguinating. Larson mostly avoids crack smoke, lights up a Capri menthol. His brain has robbed his stomach. Pete Googles Lillian Chauvin. She was a dame in her time. They pass out with lit cigs. That's it.
Those were fucking awesome, Adam. I love the lyricality of these poems. Like, the content is so fucking down and dirty, but they're so beautifully written and so playful, right? There's so much wordplay, and there's so many. I put a stanza in there where I thought in the chat that I thought was particularly like, where the way that like the language interconnects is beautiful, but it's so playful. It's so like goofy and inventive in the prose, and yet the actual content is so vicious and so nasty. And what you've done, the way you've intermingled these things, I think is just really evocative and really effective. These kick ass is what I'm trying to say. Thank you, Adam.
Thanks. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I really like what I just want to hit on what William said, is that the playfulness of the language, particularly the Fat Lungs Bleeds Out one, which reads almost like a Berryman poem, but like splattered with even like additional more cartoonishness. Like basically, I don't really know how to say it, but it's really like there's a part there. Let's see,
like slapstick, right?
So very slapstick, and they just like just the language he uses just so twisted, like vehicle motor works. The one where it's just like there's just so many lines there that are just so good and so slapstick. Like the first stanza of Fat Lungs Bleeds Out is really like lyrical in a way that's like just openly hilarious and just, but still like a reference kind of to like Berryman, I guess, or to, is that right? Or is that sort of like,
Yeah, I mean, one thing that I've appreciated from his work is like the freedom that he had with words. I mean, he could turn any single word in the English language into something that still has the feeling of that word, but it's misspelled, right? Like if he turned in his work to an English composition teacher, the whole page would be red. But it's so kind of free and liberating in a sense to sort of not worry about any of those things. And, he had a certain structure, I think, that he was actually quite meticulous about, but definitely that's an influence, and it's been kind of fun to play with the language.
Yeah, no, these are awesome, and I love them. Whenever you post them on Twitter, I always hit like, because like the character Larson is so good and so just like liberating, I guess. I don't know, to read about. It's great.
Thanks, Rudy.
Yeah, I agree with what Rudy put in the chat. He says Larson for Prez. I'm 100% on the Larson 2024 bandwagon as well. But thank you, Adam. Those were fantastic. And Calvin, I think, will be the last reader of the night, unless somebody really has a piece they want to share. Calvin, are you still with us?
Hi, I'm
Hey,
here.
Calvin, how's it going?
I'm good. I'm gonna read something from a book that I made called it's called Threats to My Manly Perky Energy. And it's about George W. Bush. And it takes place shortly after 9/11. And it mainly takes place at the Crawford, his ranch, which is called in Crawford, Texas. And I'm just going to read one passage from it. It's called Those Houston Hot Tub Condo Days. W didn't even know the handsome pastor's name, and frankly, he didn't care. All he knew was he'd come highly recommended by Pat Roberts. And for whatever reason, Roberts, an unattractive man with that well-meaning facial structure, with the soft chin and the unusually small feet, just couldn't make it down to Crawford on such short notice. But W had been skeptical of Roberts' junior man from the get-go. Still, he was awfully handsome, which got him thinking about Laura and how bad, as of late, she wanted it. And suddenly, as he considered Neil's good looks again, he found himself anxious to get the First Lady worked up. He figured Neil was bigger than most, but was he bigger than W? W considered the question, but after a few seconds, he exploded in hysterical laughter. This handsome pastor looks like a pussy hound to me, he told Laura with an easy wink, a long wink that made her blush. And at this point in the conversation, W was done giving her, at this point in the relationship, W was done giving her the business. Still, in the weeks since those towers fell, he developed some new sharp horny itch, an itch that first and foremost loved the pure white, a habit left over from those Houston hot tub condo days. Truth was, ever since 9/11, cocaine or not, he was desperate to watch a man, ideally a handsome and wholesome feller, like this pastor, give it to Laura, whole hog, right in that keister. He liked to blame it on the cocaine, but knew good and well, the cocaine or otherwise, he'd still want to watch Laura get the business. So he alerted the Secret Service, mostly good kids and a few old goats, but all loyal soldiers and all exceptionally trigger horny. Most were not regular illicit drug users, but POTUS, by way of his lead man, had instructed them all, while on duty, to stay high on that pure crystal. W didn't come to that decision lightly. He'd studied the substance, how it worked on the mind, if taken regularly. He liked what he saw. He liked the effect it had on his men. But it all started with one man, a man who impressed the hell out of POTUS, a man called Pete. He just liked Pete so much. But a few days after those towers fell, POTUS received a communication, an urgent message from his top spook. The subject of this message was a drug test. Apparently, one of his junior Secret Service officers had tested positive for crystal meth. This positive test had intrigued POTUS, as this junior officer had, as mentioned, impressed W. The officer in question was named Peter Androdi, but everyone called him Pete. Pete and Laura had really hit it off. W had observed a few brief interactions, subtle communications between the First Lady and Pete. Most people wouldn't have thought anything of it. W never observed the two, Laura and Pete, engaged in conversation. But if there was a certain language of the body, as some claim, those two were certainly speaking it. It was a language W had mastered. So there was clearly something going on between those two, something that kept W feeling perky. Shortly after those towers fell, W found himself in tight quarters with Pete. The Secret Service officers regularly rotated posts, and Andrade was on interior duty within the presidential limo. He was seated just across the way from POTUS. It was a short ride, but W was able to ask Pete about the positive meth test and his history with crystal meth. So, you like that strong powder? Asked W. And at first, Pete seized up. He figured his career in the Secret Service was coming to an end right then and there. But W didn't pick up on this. He just liked the man and wanted him to stay on this path with the crystal. Sir, responded Pete, terrified. That meth powder you've been taking, I like the effect it has. Keep it up, and you might find yourself in a senior leadership role. This was surprising to Pete. He'd been down on himself about his addiction to meth. His young wife was on the verge of leaving him, and she was, according to her, taking the kids. The day prior, he'd been pleading with her not to leave, and he'd been, for the first time in a while, clean and sober on the job, trying to make things right. He was sincerely trying to get his life together on his wife's terms, but now he was finally hearing what he'd always known in his body and heart to be true. And now it was all being affirmed by POTUS in plain language. You see, Pete always knew deep down that the meth kept him sharp and in turn kept POTUS out of harm's way. Well, thank you, sir. I just wish my wife felt the same. Pete's personal life didn't interest POTUS. He didn't care if he was married or single, but he'd been given some intel by way of his cousin, Billy Bush. Billy had told him about Hitler's private security and how they'd stayed methed up and at his side right up until the end. So despite the enemy's presence, the Allies were closing in. And despite this generally hopeless situation, they didn't abandon their fear, despite his intention, his plan to abandon them all by taking the easy, hard way out. Not that POTUS ever thought he'd find himself in a similar situation, but he did fear dying alone. And Billy knew this. So Billy had suggested that his cousin do the same with his guys. It was a short ride with POTUS. They didn't talk anymore as they covered every relevant topic. Following the chat with POTUS, Pete was anxious to score some meth ASAP, right after his shift. Additionally, he was anxious to tell his wife that he'd been ordered directly by POTUS to keep using meth. Of course, this wasn't exactly what POTUS had said, but it was obviously what he meant. And if she didn't get it, she could take that up with POTUS. Pete and his young family had rented a little place not far from the Crawford Ranch. They figured they might as well, as ever since 9/11, POTUS was spending more time on ranch. And it was certainly cheaper renting in rural Texas as opposed to around DC. Pete had never felt more anxious to score that strong powder. He even became nervous that he might get into a motor vehicle collision en route to the bar where he bought it. He also became very nervous that he might suffer a heart attack before he got a chance to score that meth. POTUS left it at that. He didn't need to directly tell Pete anything. He, for the most part, controlled these men through an intermediary. So he never gave orders, as that just wasn't his style. And of course, he wanted to stay cool with his guys, especially Pete. The head Secret Service agent was a holdover from the Hoover administration. POTUS gave him similar instructions. Whatever Pete's taken up the nose, I want all the men taking it. That's just a small part. It's pretty long.
Calvin, that was so funny. That was fucking hilarious. And you really, really captured like the unique pathology of George W. Bush and the way that like the gentle, like plain-spoken manner belied like this deeply insidious undercurrent, and the entire Pete section is phenomenal because it all hinges on like this tiny piece of dialogue, right? But you see him go through this massive like psychological unraveling, and it's so funny. It is so fucking funny. It kicks ass, Calvin. You should read more of this at some one in the future. Oh, can you hold up the cover again too? I want to see the cover again.
Pete's a very small part of the story, by the way. But that's actually a picture of me.
Oh,
and then
really?
I'm a character, a pretty big character in this. And then that's George. And then threats to my, And then I use this spiral for some reason. I don't know why, but.
Oh wow, that's amazing. I love some of the dialogue from Bush. Like, you like that strong powder? Like, that's something you could imagine him saying. Like, that's so good. It's so, oh goodness, that was great. That was really, really good.
Thank you.
Yeah, Calvin, that was fucking awesome. Thank you so much. Next up, John said he had wanted to read a piece by a friend of his, and I just saw Michael join, and he had said earlier that if we were still going by 10, which we somehow are, he had a piece he wanted to read. So John, and then Michael, and then we are done for real.
If Michael wants to go, I don't want to take. I've already read today. I don't want to take up too much time.
Do you want us to put you on the docket for next week?
No. I was just. I don't know.
Cool.
You know,
If you decide
if
you'd
you
like
want
to,
to, how about this,
sorry.
John? If you want to read now, I'm kind of flipping a coin to see one of two things I might read. So like, please, the floor is yours by all means.
Oh, all right. Well, okay. I just I don't want to take. Well, all right, I'll stop talking. This is a story by my friend Madeline Iglehart that I just wanted to read. Very good writer. She's in the new Bear Creek. This is a story based on a 1-star review on Amazon for Goodnight Moon. There's a bit of an animus bent. Everything has a spirit, but the expected paranormal activity plot never develops. He says goodnight to everything, but nothing says goodnight back. Could be improved if something replied. Would be perfect if something ate him. Michael Y. Zion's 1-star Amazon review of Goodnight Moon. 1, the animus bent. I fall asleep over and over in the great green room. The room is great because we are small and do not understand it. The room is great because it keeps us alive. I sit in the rocking chair next to the dollhouse. I'm stuck here, like everything else. I watch the carpet bleed red. I think about my grandson and the endless nights and evenings we've spent here. I think about the red dollhouse, which I can reach out and touch, and which lights up each time the room gets dark. It took me a long time to notice that it bleeds into the carpet too. I'm not sure if the carpet is a carpet. It might be something living. Sometimes I can feel it shifting beneath my feet. The mouse, who lives closest to the carpet, says that what I feel beneath us is a colony of ants. I think he wants to believe in something smaller than himself. Every hair on my body believes in something bigger. I spend my time watching my grandson, the little bunny, He is always sleeping or getting ready to sleep. I'm always awake. I guard against the room and the paintings on the walls. I watch the paintings of the three bears in the chairs, which hangs over the little bunny's bed, and the one of the cow jumping over the moon. The cow faces away from us. He is frozen, trying to move deeper into the painted blue sky. Over and over, the little bunny says goodnight to the room. He says goodnight to the moon, and it grows. Every night, the moon eats his words and grows. He says goodnight to me, and I feel more alive in that moment than the moment before. Over and over, I hush him, and even though it's useless, he is a servant of the room. He says goodnight to the paintings on the wall. When he gets to the bears, he turns around and looks up at them. I watch them cross their arms tighter than before. They shift a little in their chairs. Some parts of the room like my grandson less than others because some parts of the room don't want to be alive. Other parts, like myself, don't want to be trapped here. The little bunny says goodnight to nobody, and the room gets darker. Even the growing moon can't compete with nobody. In the dark, the room feels smaller. When the little bunny sleeps, I watch him breathe, and I know that we are real. 2. The paranormal activity plot. I can hear buzzing, a low hum from the dollhouse. The little red house vibrates and the lights flicker. The mouse watches with me as the tiny front door opens and a line of ants scream into the room. The ants march with determination into the center of the room, to the round rug. The ants walk first around the edge of the rug and then spiral inward. We do nothing but watch. The mouse must be proud of what's happening. He gives me a little nod as if to say, yes, this is how it's supposed to be. I don't know how it's supposed to be, but I didn't imagine ants. When the ants have made it to the center of the rug, they stop moving. There are just enough ants to fill the rug. The dark room now has a black center. We are the ants that live in the red house. The ants all speak at once. Their voices buzz. We believe in something bigger, and we'd like to wait for it here. Did you come from beneath the carpet? My voice is hoarse from silence. Yes, and inside the walls, and the furniture. How did you get here? How did you? 3. Could be improved if something replied. Now the mouse is smug. He used to hide near the floor or against the walls. Now he sits boldly on the little bunny's bed above the fireplace. He seems to be surveying the ants as if to say, yes, everything is going exactly as planned. Now I must guard against the ants. I don't have time to watch the paintings anymore. The ants march in their spiral, expanding and contracting their lines as evening turns into night and back to evening. When the bunny is awake, the ants widen their spiral and spread out into the red bleeding carpet. But I'm watching them, and they know not to move any further. If they do, I will eat them. Bedtime is a longer process now. The little bunny has more to do. He gets distracted while he's saying goodnight. The ants move inward, and he forgets to say goodnight to the paintings. The bears slump down in their chairs. The cow's eyes grow dull. Once he appeared to be jumping over the moon, but now it seems like he's going to slam right into it. The little bunny does not forget the ants. He says goodnight to every ant, one at a time. But he forgets to say goodnight to nobody, and so the moon grows larger. The moon is so large now that I believe if I went to the window and reached my paw out, I could touch it. 4. Would be perfect if something ate him. The room grows dark again, and the ants expand outward instead of contracting. The outer line of ants step off the rug and onto the carpet. They form a straight line. I'm ready to do whatever I can to protect the little bunny, but they aren't moving towards the little bunny's bed. They are marching to the window. The little mouse is asleep on the mantel, and I'm alone to witness it. The ants crawl up the wall and onto the windowsill. One by one, they march through the window and onto the moon. The moon is so bright now that the green and red room is blue in its glow. The ants are blue, black, and then black again as they leave the room. Soon they're all marching on the moon, in the room, in the middle of the carpet. Where the thickest clump of ants once crawled sits a black box. The box emits a low hum. I find that I can stand up, and for the first time I do. I walk over to the box and open it. Inside is a note. It says, to the little old lady, we've eaten through the room and broken the spell you've been trapped under. Take your grandson and follow us. If you don't, you will be eaten by the room itself. Regards, the ants. I pick up the little bunny and hold his sleeping body close to my heart. He smells like mildew, but his fur is soft. I stand with him at the window and watch the moon. The ants march along the blue-gray dirt. They gather dust on their feet and antennae. They buzz with excitement.
Wow, that was a wild fucking ride. And all of that based on that, all of that fucking brilliant Amazon review. You need to get Madeline here to read one of her pieces at some point. That was fucking phenomenal. That was some truly, I don't know, just taking like a children's story, especially one that's been like so monotonously like repeated and consumed as Goodnight Moon, and turning it into this piece of like surreal horror. I think it's fucking, it kicks ass. Yeah, no, that was great. Thank you, John. Michael,
Cool. Can you guys hear me?
loud and clear.
Sweet. I was kind of going back and forth on things to potentially read. And then I decided, fuck it, I'm gonna read the last chunk of my novel, if that's cool. Which I know I've read pieces of this here, but I don't believe I've actually read this before. And I was editing this the other night, so I kind of want to try out the version that I think is less shitty than the one I had before. So I just dropped the link in there. Cool. Lena pulls onto the highway and speeds north for a while, then south, then north again. Outside the windshield, the shadow of the van grows longer. The sun dips lower in the sky. Everything above them screams bronze, every remnant of the storm banished and forgotten. The camera sits between them with the power turned off. As she drives, Lena thinks about the coming semester again. She thinks about what Sarah said and what John said and imagines them all, Max as well, running wild in the streets of Boston's North End. She smiles at the thought of these looming nights, how their laughter will thunder through the old and narrow streets, and their tireless feet will hammer the cobblestones. Young, full of electricity, immortal, boundless. Lena starts to feel that everything before, the isolation and the burning need to prove herself, was just a passing phase, that she's entering something new and fresh. It doesn't even matter if the movie works out. She thinks of showing her footage and the knowing nods she'll get, the cautious praise, the budding sense that she's onto something, even if that something is terrifying. But maybe it's the first step toward more. This must be true, she thinks. She then realizes that the van's windshield is smudged, unclean, so she presses the button beside the steering wheel. Jets of washer fluid splash on the glass and the wipers swish the fluid away. Gray stirs beside her and sits up in his seat. Thank you, he says. For what? I don't know. Lena flexes her fingers, feeling a stiffness from gripping the wheel for so long, and asks, can you tell me about your wife? About Alexa? Gray rubs his face with his hands. What do you want to know? Just anything, really. I want to know what she was like. Are you recording? No. Gray clears his throat. She was perfect, like just one of a kind. She brought out the best in people, and she was, you remind me of her. Lena looks over at him. She thinks about the night in the basement, what happened on the couch in the darkness when the camera was off, wondering if he remembers what they did. How, she asks. You stick by me. You haven't left. She didn't either until it was too late. And then what happened? I left. I couldn't come back. Not until, his voice trails off. Until what? Not until I knew what I had to do to make it right with everybody. When I asked you before why you hurt people, you said you were making it right. What does that mean? Making it right, making it wrong, it's the same. Nothing brings them back. And I'm not me. I'm not me. Tears trace the years in his face. I need to be somewhere. Please take me there. Lena shudders and says nothing. Something inside says, stop the van, get out and run. But instead, at the next exit, she pulls the van off the ramp and then loops back around toward Montford. By the time they're back in town, the sky has grown dark. They pass through Montford Center in a slow-moving line of cars. A police officer directs traffic at the heart of the 5-way intersection. The signal lights above him black from an apparent power outage. Lena and the officer lock eyes as they drift past. 25 minutes later, Lena parks on the hill about a quarter mile from the party house where Gray was stabbed, where Gray said the enemy lived. Lena looks over at Gray as he is touching the spot where the knife entered him. Are you all right? Lena asks. Gray doesn't respond. Lena picks up the camera and turns it on and opens the monitor screen. She uses her thumb to wipe at a small smudge of blood that still won't come off. Gray opens the door and steps out into the night. Lena gets out and follows him, feeling the hot night air in her face as they move down the slope street. The house looms high on the left, and unlike the last time, there is no music and the neighborhood lies hushed, the signs of life and recession. When they reach the lawn, Gray steps onto the grass and stops a few feet from the front door. "Get out here now," Gray shouts. "Get out here, you fucking bastard." Laughter from within the garage. The garage door is open and Lena can see the faint outlines of several people inside. Metal chairs scrape against concrete. 3 men step out into the light, including the one who stabbed Gray. The man at the front of the group is shorter, his hair slicked back and tied in a knot. "Come back for more, huh?" "Fuck you," says Gray. "How's Alexa these days, Jimmy?" Gray says nothing, but his body shakes, hands balled into fists. "Let's have some fun," the man says. "Let's have some fun," he says again. "It's time to end this," says Gray. The man laughs, croaky bursts, and sits on the front steps of the house. "It's good to see you, Jimmy. Really. Shut the hell up, you and me, right now. Stand up." "We'll get to that," the man says, reaching into his pocket and removing a small pistol. He rests it on his leg, an immovable smile on his face. Something that feels cold and frighteningly inevitable creeps up Lena's spine. "It's a real shame," the man says. "Real goddamn shame about your kid. We're gonna settle this, you and me, once and for all." "What the fuck are you even talking about, Jimmy? You're one of us." "No, get on your feet now." The man fires the pistol as Gray rushes him. Gray yelps and grabs his stomach with both arms as he crumples to the ground. Lena gasps, loses her footing, and falls down beside him. The man laughs and fires the pistol again. A spurt of blood bursts out of Gray's leg as the bullet hits, and Gray howls, seizes his leg, staring at Lena with a face marred by panic. Lena scrambles to her feet, but slips on the grass again and drops the camera. The fear of death swarms Lena's senses, and she flees toward the road. Thoughts of the camera, of Gray, the film, everything behind her. A voice in her mind screaming, "Live, live, live." Thoughts only of her feet on the pavement, the nearby car, how she needs to drive as far away as possible. A voice rises like a cloak behind her. "Grab the girl." The camera is still recording. On the monitor screen, Lena runs out of sight, the camera's microphone capturing her bawling shouts. The 3 men, shadows on the screen, reach the road. The pistol fires again, and Gray's moans cease. A scream, horror-drowned, rips through the air beyond the camera's eye. Then a bullet strikes the camera and breaks it apart. And that's it.
Michael, that was mesmerizing. I love the gradual incremental ratcheting up of tension throughout this piece. But is this it? Is the novel finished? Are you done with your first draft of it? Is this like...
Yeah, I'm in the process. I haven't like touched it in a few months. I'm in the process of getting it to a version that I like. I'm kind of just slimming it down a bit, and then I think there'll be maybe more y'all hear hopefully pretty soon about what might happen to it. I think there's going to be more editing.
Is this Hero? Is it called Hero Man? Was that
Yeah,
the title of it?
Hero
This is
Man.
Hero Man. Okay. Rad.
I'm excited because I know this is the 3rd or 4th time you've read an excerpt from this here, and every time it's been riveting. So I want to see this thing. I want to hold this thing in my fucking hands is what I'm saying. So yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome that you've got a finished draft then.
Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to sharing it. There was an excerpt very recently on the Selected Prose podcast. So that was really cool. But yeah, hopefully y'all will be hearing a bit more about the future of this book pretty soon.
Fingers crossed. All right. Thank you so much, Michael. And I think that's it. I think that's it for tonight. Actually, this was one of the rare Misery Loves Companies where the open mic was like 3/4 of the reading. But I'm glad that so many people brought so much great work, because I was scared. I was like, damn, like only 6 people have signed up. We've got like half an hour here, but we ended up going for a solid 2 hours. So That's fucking rad. And as always, I will leave the Zoom room open for another hour or so if people want to hang out. But that's it for the reading portion of Misery Loves Company. If you're watching this on YouTube after the fact, we do this every fucking week, Friday night, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. Pacific. We tweet out the link from our Twitter account at Misery Tourism about, I don't know, about 15, 20 minutes before we begin. And yeah, that's that. Thank you everyone who read. Thank you everyone who came. Another fucking awesome one. All right.